As an hors d'oeuvre to the Argos Pick and Pay one-day classic, there was now a 4-day Giro Del Capo, beginning with a time trial and moving on to a road race, another time trial, and the finish in the Argos itself. On Thursday morning in Constantia, the race opened with a 17 kilometres time trial, and soon we knew the names to watch. Anton Vermaarke, his father's Belgian, and so Anton races for Belgium, but he's very much a South African. And there's the old veteran professional for Southern Sun, Willy Engelbrecht, 18 seasons in the saddle for Willy, and not an easy man to beat. Engelbrecht set the trend when he arrived at the finishing line, but there was still one rider to take them all on. His name, one for Europe to note in 1992, Andrew McLean, left and set the best time of the time trial. It was Andrew McLean who was to become the first leader of the new Giro Del Capo. He was the only man to beat 21 minutes, so McLean led Engelbrecht and Vermaarke. And so, on to stage 2, 110 kilometres around the vineyards outside of Belleville, and the big field of 157 in no hurry to leave the start. Well, that was soon to change. Once out onto the open road, the Mnet Southern Sun team were launching attacks. Their arch rivals, the Top Sport team, had McLean on the squad, and they were going to give him the hardest day possible. Speeds of 60 kilometres an hour were commonplace. Engelbrecht attacked, others attacked too. The Top Sport team chased them down. Man after man, they wheeled them back into the big field. Breakaways formed at the front. Staristecki here was chased for 10 kilometres. He wasn't to have his day. Heading up over a hotspot sprint, the field were not far behind. On the climb of Fisher's Hook, it was Willy Engelbrecht first over the top. It was left to the veteran, Robin McIntosh, on the same team as Andrew McLean to bring him back. But still, Engelbrecht would have his day. He would win the stage, but he wouldn't gain the time he required to take the lead away from Andrew McLean. Even so, it was a nice double for the Southern Sun Mnet team, Engelbrecht beating teammate Kruger and McLean right there in third place. And Andrew's next big test came on the hill climb, stage 3. 5.8 kilometres of vicious slopes of Signal Hill, just outside Camps Bay. As the leader of the race, in this case, he was first man to start. Nobody in front of him. He had to set the best time, and there was no target for him to go for. In fact, starting behind him, the man he feared most at this stage, Willy Engelbrecht, was next away, a gap of only 30 seconds. Man to man, they were battling on the slopes now as number 3 goes off, Anton Vermaarke. A look at the face of Engelbrecht tells us the story. He doesn't like climbing hills, especially at 7 o'clock in the morning. And for 2 days now, John Charlesworth had been beginning his challenge. He was now in a position to consolidate on the climb. He was chasing all of them up the hill. Charlesworth concentrating on a good ride. Andrew McLean thinking only of victory and keeping the leader's yellow jersey. Engelbrecht was losing ground, not only to McLean, but also to this man, Anton Vermaarke. And Charlesworth, too, was living with the best of them. The clouds held the secrets of success for Anton Vermaarke, because in the clouds he caught and passed Willy Engelbrecht. By the checkered flag, though, the first man home and the winner of the stage was Andrew McLean, Vermaarke second and Charlesworth third. Perfect day like it was 1 year ago, when the leaders set record times for the Argos Pick and Pay. This was now serious business, the coming to the end of the 4-day race, the 16,500 riders eventually out on the road as well. It was a tough day. This chasing group forming was part of a group which included Robin McIntosh. The main field behind were now having to consider what would happen on Smitswinkle Hill, the first chance they get to split the field. Into Simonstown, around about 40 kilometres done, the lead was almost 2 minutes. And you know, these three riders were showing no signs of tiring. The chasing group of some 6 men, Robin McIntosh, Alan Waluta, Marcus Hess, Gary Spate, Fordy Kotze and Franzi Kruger, all strong men, and yet they were making no impression on these three riders. They were flying. The leaders now had got in amongst the tandems who'd started in front of them. That wasn't intended by the organisation, I can assure you, and the tandems were happy to help them out. The tandem race was a separate race, of course. Tandemist who would come out with the best time of the day, well, Chris Van Zel and his teammate Richard Chesterton. They had ridden so well so far, and they would run out the best tandem time of the day. Well, it's not quite cricket if the tandemists set the pace for the 3 breakaways, but there's no rules say you can't in the Argos Pick and Pay, and the 3 breakaways were glad of the break. Well, it takes all sorts, and you bet your life they'll all finish as well. Meanwhile, the Giro Del Capo goes on, heading out now towards Smitswinkle. Over the top of Smitswinkle for the 3 leaders, and driving the train here is Mark Wilkinson. The expected attack from the main field on the climb of Smitswinkle didn't materialise. The big peloton, the French word for bunch, well, they climbed up to the halfway point all together, and the 3 leaders were still holding their own. The atmosphere was certainly tranquil at the back of the Argos Pick and Pay. It was very serious at the front. The professionals were now worried by this escape of 3 amateur riders, and a chasing group of 6 had formed and was being led by the top sport teammate of Andrew McLean, and that was Robin McIntosh. There he is in the blue, in 4th place, and the winner, let's not forget, of the Argos Pick and Pay a year ago. He now turned around at the bottom of the peninsula, and they're riding on the other side and heading back towards the finish. But it's not a flat road, as anybody knows who lives on the Cape Peninsula. There was still the climb of Commokie and Chapman's Peak and Sycabossie, and all those lovely names that run down the coastline. This race wasn't over yet. The front 3 were riding so strongly. They had built a lead over the chase group, approaching the climb of Commokie of 1 minute and 28 seconds. McIntosh was keeping the tempo high. The big field in a straight line now was angry. They were chasing down the leaders, hopefully. Commokie Lighthouse, a great sight. You haven't got the rest of the Cape to still ride. One thing about racing in South Africa, the roads are guaranteed to be good, at least on the surface, because in Europe the roads are quite often bad. All these riders had to do was keep their rhythm, keep their strength, and they'd finish 1st, 2nd and 3rd at Camps Bay. This had been a marvellous breakaway. It had gone clear after only 2 kilometres of the opening of the race. Around the edge of Commokie, heading on through the town itself, The race was splitting up a little bit at the front, but this is because Mark Wilkinson seemed more concerned to be in the lead on the descent. Once off the descent, they were all together again. There was still a real chance these three riders could survive to the finish. Chasing group of 6 were still holding their own, but around about a minute behind. The main field was almost 2 minutes back. And just look at this, the unconventional machine of Piers Schmidt. And the only reason he was behind in the first place was because he'd had mechanical trouble. But they go so much faster, and very soon he was on his way again. He would take second place in the unconventional section. So the three leaders of the Giro Del Capo had seen it all. The tandems, the unconventionals, they were picking them all up on the open road. They really were doing a tremendous ride. And meanwhile, back at Simonstown, well, it was all fun and games. And thanks to Coke, there was a drink for everyone, and everyone wanted a drink. Not quite the urgency of the Giro del Capo, but the rewards are the same at the end. This was 38-year-old Michael Kramer. Wait till he gets on Smitswinkle. He won't be smiling then. And so back out on the open road, the three riders were still being hunted by the 6 chasers, and the big field was closing in on all of them. In all my life as an international cycling commentator, I've never seen 3 cyclists on ordinary bikes take shelter from an unconventional. Robbie McIntosh takes a drink. His long years as a professional, he's seen it all before. He was gambling now on these 3 riders tiring out, because for sure the 6 chasers with McIntosh were not going to catch them. Piers Schmidt happy to take it lying down, but the 3 around him were very serious indeed. Down at Sun Valley, the gaps were closing. The 6 chasers now just over 50 seconds ahead of the main field. They would be caught soon. And the faces too of the 3 leaders were beginning to show the pain of the day. The big pack were closing in. Weeks of training were now behind them. The gamble had started very early on in the race. There was no choice now but just to hang on in there and hope you could survive Chapman's Peak. Well, some of us can take it sitting down, especially the 3 leaders here. The next target now was Chapman's Peak. They were showing signs of a strain, and well they might after breaking away so early in the race. If they can cross Chapman's Peak with a lead of a minute, then Psychobossi should only be a formality. More tandems passed, but certainly not the lead tandem on the road of Chris Van Zyl and Richard Chesterton. They were heading for the best time of the day, set by anyone. And you know, there can't be a more scenic race route than this one. It is the most beautiful countryside one could wish to see, although the riders right now didn't really appreciate it. Their thoughts were trained on Chapman's Peak. The field was getting smaller by the minute, and they were also getting closer by the second. Vincent Curtis, Mark Wilkinson, Johan Ribbons, the same 3 names we talked about now since the race began. They still were driving the train, although the fire wasn't quite the same anymore. Over the top of Chapman's Peak. The first man over, Johan Ribbons. The trouble with Chapman's Peak is, it goes up, it levels, and then it kicks again. The chase group was thinning out now. Robbie McIntosh was still leading the chase. The main field were closing in. Just behind him was Franzi Kruger. And then too was Gary Spate and Alan Waluta. twisting descent down towards Hout Bay. And once you get to Hout Bay, a right turn, and ahead of you lies Suikerbossie. At the head of the main field, still closing it in, was Anton Vermaelijke, the rider in the Belgian team colours. He'll be in Belgium by now, thinking of his future as an Olympic cyclist. A long chase down where speeds of 70 and 80 kilometres an hour can be achieved. Next stop, Hout Bay, and then the Battle of Suikerbossie. These three knew if they could survive the climb of Suikerbossie, then surely they would win this race with a remarkable breakaway. On the descent, the big field had swept up the 6 chasers. They were now all as one, hunting 3. Mark Wilkinson in the white helmet. The right turning Hout Bay, the battle was about to begin.
How's it going so far?
Well, back on Suikerbossie. The 3 leaders had 40 seconds at the bottom. Midway up the climb, they had been swamped by the big pack. The pack had gambled, and they'd made their kill. Once over the top, where, by the way, Johan Ribbens had won the Prix, although goodness knows where he found the strength to do that. After leading the race for so long, he then fell back. This was now a select group of 23 riders. In it were all of the front-runners of the Giro Del Capo, including the yellow jersey of Andrew McLean. But it was John Charlesworth who was still very anxious to try and recoup his lost time. He was in 3rd place overall. At least now he wanted the win on the day. Marking him immediately, the top sport rider in blue there, and the Southern Sun Mnet riders in pink. The 2 professionals were not going to let a British amateur rider steal their spoils right now. Tremendous pacemaking by Gary Binneker. His main aim now was to keep the pace high, to stop the attacks coming, and hopefully to pave the way for victory for someone on his team. Binneker kept the pace high. Nobody could go by him. The yellow jersey of Andrew McLean in 4th place. All Andrew had to do was finish with this group to be sure of overall victory. He wasn't looking for the win. He was looking to get home safely. So the final few kilometres remaining of the Giro Del Capo. What a triumph this has been for the Western Province Pedal Power Association, who dreamt of bringing riders to Cape Town and see them do battle over 4 days. They were now seeing a great climax to what had been a marvellous race this day. The Southern Sun Mnet team, beaten last year by Top Sport, were angry. They had enough riders in this group now to set the pace. Gary Binneker was exceptional. John Charlesworth still trying to get the victory for Great Britain. Attacks. He's chased by his teammate Gary Spate, and then the Mnet boys push Spate out of the way. They wanted to get onto the wheel of Charlesworth. This young man hopefully will be in the Olympic Games in Barcelona later this year. He'd lived in South Africa for 5 months since he came in October. He liked the place so much, he simply stayed. Small elite group of the leaders of the Giro del Capo charge along Camps Bay to the cheer of the crowd. The Southern Sun team still holding on to that front position, and it was still Gary Binneker. But even the hard riding by Gary Binneker had to end at some time, and he'd ruined the chances of most. Now it was his teammate Francie Kruger setting the pace. The finish was coming closer. Willy Engelbrecht was in 2nd place, and Steven Walluter was in 3rd. All 3 of them members of the Southern Sun Mnet team. Then it was Kruger, his work done, who fell away, leaving Willy Engelbrecht now to finish off the day for Southern Sun. Steven Walluter held on to 2nd place, and it was the amateur rider Darius Starostecki who was going to finish in 3rd place. Engelbrecht, the winner of 3 previous August tours, was now also winning the last stage of the Giro del Capo.